Thank you so much for this opportunity. I do want to recognize Tien Ho, who's running for district attorney in Sacramento back here. That will be another opportunity, history in the making. When Tien wins this in June, it'll be the first ever, the only Vietnamese refugee to be a district attorney here in Sacramento, California, all across. There's no other. So this is a win for us here when he wins this in June. But he's going to need all of the same help, all of the same assistance as well too, and just the power of the people here. I do want to thank my mentors, Mei Lee, Tom, Margaret, and Nguyen from Sacramento, who are also here, because without them, I wouldn't be here. I mean, she spoke so much and so eloquently about her years of service here, but you know, without her, truly, she has the capital in the palms of her hand. If you ever want to see that happen, I have proof of it. She just says one word, everybody does it. The amount of power in which she has, but it's because of the amount of work she's committed into the community for decades. And I've learned that from her. And that's what I want to be, is just like her, to be able to move our community just like that. Started to realize that this is the Sandy Cho whose name appears on buildings, right? Like everywhere I go now, I see his name there. And I said, this is the man here. But he never talks about all of the wonderful things he does in our community. And that is so like us as Asian Americans, as Mei Lee Tom talked about. But I'm going to change it. And I've told him, I'm telling everybody about you. And I'm telling everybody about all the things that you've done for the community, because it's a part of history and people know that. And people, if you don't tell, and if nobody tells, that legend dies. And I will make it a part of my life to be able to tell everybody everything about you, Sandy, everything. And all the commitments you've done in our community. Daughter of refugees. My parents came here during the fall of Saigon. English is a second language for me. My parents sailed at sea for many months and weeks until they were accepted into Australia. And from Australia, they were then sponsored to be able to go to Louisiana. So I'm actually born in Louisiana. So if you ever wanted to hear an Asian little girl speak Southern accent, that was me, right? But then we moved to California and I lost that accent. But we moved to California because there were so many opportunities there, so many resources and services for refugees, for Vietnamese refugees, like there wasn't in all of the other states. And when we got there, we relied heavily on all of the public assistance programs that were there. We had 6 kids. It was my mom, my dad, 6 of us. I'm the third oldest and the first daughter. And many of you know and understand being the first daughter, what that means, and all of the things that come with being the first daughter, right? Being the first son is, you're like the golden son, but being the first daughter, you can't mess up no matter what. And so I had the pressure on me as the first daughter and of 6 children in the family. My parents spoke 0 English. And so it was up to us to rely on how we were going to be, as young kids, make the life for ourselves. And that meant going to school. And my parents felt, because we understood the English language and because we were able to speak English, we knew everything. That meant being in the 3rd grade, I had to take my parents to the doctors and opening up their mail and telling them what they needed to sign and not sign and what the doctor said or whatnot. So imagine a 3rd grader doing that, right? It's very stressful. It's very stressful for a kid. It's very stressful for me today when my parents come to me and give me the stack of their mail and I have to look through it, right? And so I felt like this should never happen. This should never happen. We should never have to drive around to so many different places for them to say, sorry, not here, you got to go somewhere else. Imagine a family, low income, barely making it, having to go around looking for services, looking for assistance, being very limited in the English language, and yet being turned away in so many different doors. I was fortunate enough to be able to lead an organization called Asian Resources. The Asian Resources started over 40 years ago, but my family never knew about the organization. And I made it my goal to be able to say no other family will go through what my family went through. And as Sandy talked about what's happening in Ukraine right now and what happened in Afghanistan, our goal is to help all communities. Mei Lee Tom touched on this, is that it's not just about us, it's about helping each other out. It's about building unity. It's about being able to lift each other up, because we all come from a world in which there's so many things. The organization has served immigrants and refugees for the past 40 years. I now have 4 locations, one that is a satellite office here in LA. And Sandy is right, is that we were able and fortunate enough to build the organization up to now where we're about a $10 million organization. Our staff speak and read and write over 30 different languages, but far more than anything, the staff are immigrants, they're refugees, they were once upon a time homelessness, they were once upon a time formerly incarcerated, they struggled. And I have found that when you find somebody that has struggled in life, their passion comes out and they want to help. It's not about the money, it's about I was there and I want you to be there as well too. Imagine this, imagine a girl who is a daughter of refugees who spoke very little English, grew up in a low-income family and relied on all of the public assistance programs you can think of. I didn't come from wealth. I didn't come from a family of power, but I was able to be elected in a city that is moderate, in a city where the median income is about $75,000 a year, in a city in which it's the second largest city in the Sacramento region. And not only did I get elected, but I got elected with 65% of the votes, the most amount of votes at the time in that election year. I never thought that would ever happen. I never thought a community would ever accept a poor, low-income girl and be able to elect her as an elected official. I'm going to use my experience as an executive director working with low-income families, immigrants, refugees, communities of color, and also my experience as an elected official in a city to be able to take it to the Capitol, because it takes somebody who understands the community, who's been there, who's actually struggled, to be able to understand what policies we need to make to lift all of our communities up. And I'm gonna win this. I'm an elected official in the city that is 40% of this district. It's also in an area that is predominantly more of your 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th generation APIs. And then the last part of it is, it's in the Little Saigon district where I have worked for the last 15 years with our communities, especially during COVID, bringing out $5 million worth of financial assistance to families that couldn't pay for their rent, couldn't pay for food, and couldn't pay for their utilities. I also worked with many of our Asian American communities in getting them access to COVID shots when it wasn't available, when it was available to all other communities except for our communities. And I said, that's not fucking fair. Right? You're getting this to everybody else except for the communities that speak another language. Your materials aren't even in other languages. They're in Spanish, but they're not in Vietnamese, they're not in Chinese, they're not in Hmong, they're not in any of my other people's languages. So I made them have the COVID shots at my office. And let me tell you, we had 1,000 people come through. And they were floored because they didn't think we would be able to bring this community out to get COVID shots. To be left behind, just like the COVID shots, just like the financial assistance. And I had to fight so hard for that. And that's why I want to take this to the Capitol, because it's our turn. It's our turn to be up there. It's our turn to say, we need a seat at the table and we're going to fight for this. It's our turn to be able to say, I know what our community wants because once upon a time, I was there. There's not very many legislators that can say they were on public assistance their whole life. There are not many legislators that they can say that they were, lived in low-income communities, that they worked directly with the communities. I've looked, I've asked around. There are none. I will be the only one. And I'm looking at all of you in here because I know you were once upon a time an immigrant or a refugee or a son or a daughter of. And so you understand exactly what I'm talking about. And you understand that our fight is different than the typical fight that we normally see. And that's why I'm running. That's why I need your support. This is not about coming from a family of money or coming from a family of wealth. This is about the power of the people. And we will win this because of all of you in this room. We will win this because you will see and you will know and you will understand how important it is that we have representation in that house, because the policies that are made and decided on and voted on in that house is going to affect all of us. It's going to affect our children. It's going to affect your grandchildren. It's going to affect your nieces and nephews, and we can't let that happen. We can't be left behind. So I want to thank you so much again for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Sandy, for hosting this. Thank you so much, Joel. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I am going to need your help. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be a lot. It's a lot. We're jumping in at a very last minute here, but not too last minute. but out of respect, because we are all about respect. Our community here, if there's one thing I've learned, is that we are about respect. The fact that I'm talking to you and looking at you in the eye, I would never do that to my mom and dad. Know that. Ever. I don't think I know what color my dad's eyes are because I've never looked. I look down, I'll look everywhere else but in their eyes because I understand what that means and I value that. And what we continue to value is respect. We respect each other, we respect other communities. And I needed to respect my friend who was the assembly member and waited until he decided that he was done. And when he decided he was done is when I said, I will run for your seat. And he got behind me. And so did Assembly Member Kevin McCarty and Senator Pan. The three legislators that oversee the district that you never want to put in the room together because they can't stand each other, they can't agree on anything, and they don't like each other. But they've come together in their final days and said, this is the person that we can agree on, and that is me. And that is not because of anything other than the fact that they've seen the work I've done in the community for the last 20 years. They've seen the fact that I've been able to move communities together and not just one community. And I know that's what we need there in the Capitol. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.